back to another episode of Doublers Podcast. My lovely guest here today is Ryan Walsh. Ryan is an oboist and a wine and beer expert, currently based in Pittsburgh, but we met in New York City because Ryan lived here for quite a long time. So welcome, Ryan. Thanks so much for joining us here. So to start off, could you give us a brief introduction of kind of where you're at right now, and just sort of your current career sitch?
Okay. Hi everyone. As Erin mentioned, I am Ryan. I am reporting from my kitchen, Pittsburgh. I just moved here in June. Before that, as she mentioned, I was living in New York for 17 years. I moved there for school, and stayed for music. I'm originally from Washington State. Let's see. I moved to Pittsburgh because my partner is a pediatric emergency room doctor, and he got a fellowship here at the Children's Hospital here in Pittsburgh. So we moved right after kind of the big COVID crisis in New York City. We left. I'm an oboist and English horn player. It was so much easier the first time.
We're totally on take 2 right now, just full disclosure. We're doing a great job today.
Yeah, so before COVID, I was on the national Broadway tour of Les Mis, and we closed down on March 13th. It was Friday the 13th. We were in Durham, North Carolina. I'm also an adjunct professor of oboe at Montclair State University in New Jersey, where I teach oboe, coach chamber music, teach a woodwind practicum, play in the faculty woodwind quintet. And then as of recently, I'm pretty much full-time doing wine tastings, virtual wine tastings. Sometimes beer, sometimes liquor, but like 99% of the time wine tastings.
Delicious.
And yeah, it's been a journey, but it's been really fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's start a little further back. So when you were in school, so this is a question that, I know that I think of when I hear about musicians doing other sorts of jobs. What did you study in school? Are your degrees in music?
Yeah, both of them are in music. I went to Mannes College of Music, total, performance degree. I did some university in Washington State before I transferred to Mannes, so I had done some non-music classes there. But yeah, my education was like 99% music.
Right. And so your master's is in performance, all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very cool.
Yep.
Very cool. That's awesome.
And actually, between my degrees, I took a year off and just kind of lived in New York City, worked in a restaurant, and the restaurant had a very extensive wine list because the owner's wife is a sommelier, and she was actually a wine educator. And so they gave us the opportunity to become certified wine experts under her tutelage. And so we took classes a couple times a week with her, learned the whole tasting process, learned all about wine from all over the world. And then we took the tests at the end of the class and got certified.
That's awesome. So is that the certification that you have now that you're using in your tasting activity? That's very cool.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was a fun process. She's a great teacher, and I learned a lot. And then over the last several years, I've been doing more self-study, just to make sure I'm not spouting lies.
Right. Nothing worse than spouting lies about wine. That's awesome. So it sounds like in between undergrad and grad school was where you started down this path of being interested in wine and gaining that knowledge. And when you were, obviously now it sounds like the balance has shifted more towards more tastings, more, leaning into that side. The word pivot isn't my favorite, but leaning into that piece of what you were already doing anyway, and something that you were already interested in. How has that balance sort of shifted over the period of time between when you first were certified and you were first discovering this interest, how has that kind of played out over the last maybe 10 years or so?
Well, after I got the certification, I pretty much only used it in the restaurant, while I was helping people with wine, learning about wine. But then I left the restaurant industry and I didn't use it again for quite a while. But then I started doing tastings, just kind of as a side gig. There's a company in New York called We Could Do at the time, and they changed their name to Confetti recently. But they kind of organize events for whomever would like to do them. And so their clients are like big ad agencies, LinkedIn, Facebook, stuff like that. And they'll organize events for them. And so I partnered with them and started doing beer tastings and liquor tastings, and then started doing wine tastings with them as well. But it wasn't until, COVID hit that I really kind of leaned into it pretty heavily. Just because, like all other musicians right now, we were just had the rug pulled out from under us, and it was like, okay, well, what am I gonna do?
Right.
Like,
yeah, I mean, you were out on a tour. I mean, that was expected. You were booked through like July or something, right?
We had dates out to 2023.
Oh my God, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Holy
they're
shit.
hoping that maybe they'll start it again next fall.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, but that's
it was.
That's huge.
Yeah, I mean, that's like some job security right there. And
Which is, we don't get very often. So when you finally like reach the holy grail.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like everyone else, I was like in a panic. I was like, okay, what are my usable skills? I was like, I could do a coding boot camp or something. But that's a huge investment and no guarantee that I'm going to love it. I worked in events for a long time, so I can do flowers and can design a wedding or a corporate event. But again, COVID killed that industry.
Right.
And, at the time I was like, okay, well, I do wine tastings, but again, you need to be in person to do that. And then I was talking to my partner's sister, and she was like, you should really, like, we could do something virtually. You have this knowledge. Why don't you do it? And then we were kind of like, oh, well, that could actually be a cool thing. We did one, and she was like, you have to turn this into something. So
that's awesome.
Then I started doing it virtually, and have done several, like I have a company, I have a website, but my main thing lately has been this company in California called In Good Taste. They produce their own wines, and they were in kind of everywhere. They had been marketing to hotels and airports, like small bottles of boutique wine. But again, COVID pivot, or whatever word you choose.
Right.
They did direct to consumer, and now they're doing like 450 virtual tastings a week.
Wow.
And I'm one of like 42 tasters on their roster. It's crazy.
That's amazing.
Last week I did 9 tastings.
Wow.
In 5 days.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
It was fun though.
Yeah. So it sounds like
that was a rambling answer. I'm so sorry.
No, I loved it. I love it. So it sounds like you have a balance of you're both working for someone and also running your own business, and so you don't have to worry because I've had my own businesses doing different things. I designed websites for a while,
Right.
things like that, and sometimes it takes a while to get it off the ground, and that can be a difficult period if you're starting the business because you need the income. That sort of period where it's not necessarily paying off can be challenging. So that
Absolutely.
it's really awesome to have that balance of you can build up your own clientele, but you also have this resource of this other place that has sort of 450 tastings a week is like, that's hard to get that many bookings. Yeah. So that's very cool.
I'm in a really lucky position.
Yeah, that's great that you were able to pull those two pieces together. That's really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit more about your experience in the events world. That also sounds interesting.
Yeah, so when I was in grad school, my next door neighbor, like I had left the restaurant industry, I was freelancing. My next door neighbor worked in events, worked for a big floral design company. And one day came over and was like, hey, I know that this may be a little bit out of your wheelhouse, but we're processing 20,000 roses for a wedding, and we need just extra people to come help process them. Can you do it? It's like $20 an hour. And I was like, yes, sure, sounds fun. Let's go. And so I started doing that a little bit, and then started doing more. I started actually making the arrangements, started going out on events as part of the production team. And then my ex and I started, well, he had started a business, had just started it, and then I helped him scale it up, and we scaled it up to a really kind of a big deal business for a while. I mean, we were the main, I guess, florist, like event florist for Morgan Stanley, Chase Bank, New York Stock Exchange, and we did all their events.
Wow.
Like Morgan Stanley nationwide, Chase Bank in New York City, New York Stock Exchange. I mean, we did the Maybelline 100th anniversary party and built like it was really fun. Anyway,
wow.
But it was really fun to do something so other to what I had been training for so long, and then to like gain that skill, gain that experience, and just be. It's a really interesting outlet for creativity.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure there's also some parallels. I mean, so much of performance is about presentation.
Exactly.
And I'm sure you were able to. Did you find that you were able to pull in some of your musical skills? I mean, did anything translate across those two pursuits? That you.
Yeah. I mean, like as musicians, we're so trained to be very attentive to detail. So like we notice minute changes in pitch or dynamics or tone, timbre, and that actually is very helpful in floral arranging or in putting an event together, being able to notice when things aren't just right the way they should be.
Right.
And I found that was something that really helped me get a lot of experience really quickly, because I was able to do make these minute adjustments just right off the bat.
Yeah. So. Well, especially as a reed maker, I'm sure.
Yeah, that too.
I feel like the dexterity of the average oboist is way above average, and especially compared to, say, like a French horn player. But
I mean, yeah, like we're sitting there making reeds, we're taking off hundredths of a millimeter thickness cane.
Right. Yeah.
It's stupid. I don't know why I do what I do.
I don't know how you guys do it. I'm
a masochist or something.
I know. I'm like struggling through oiling my horn once every 3 weeks. I bought one mouthpiece 10 years ago and it still works.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine like what I would do with all like
yeah.
I'd have so much more time to practice.
Right. But hey, almost all of the double reed players that I know who spend that amount of time on reeds, they've got like a reed show or like a reed, I watch plenty of television, but I'm not doing anything constructive, so y'all got it worked out. Oh, that's too funny. So, obviously right now with COVID being what it is, these unprecedented times, as they say on the internets, it probably looks a little bit different, but say back in the regular times, how did you find that balance? How did you balance performing and gigs with these other pursuits? Like, how did you structure your days, your weeks, your months, however that generally looked like? What was that structure like for you? And did it fluctuate a lot over time?
It did fluctuate a lot over time, but I found that it lent itself really easily to balance. Just because for some reason the way all of the tastings and gigs fell, they just kind of fell into the calendar and worked themselves out. I was really lucky, but I mean, as a freelance musician, there are times when you don't have a lot of gigs. I mean, when was it? 2 Octobers ago, I had like 3 gigs, and I was like, what am I gonna do? And then I ended up getting, I think 10 or 12 beer tastings that I did that completely counterbalanced my lack of gigs. So,
That's awesome.
but it was easy because most anytime I had like a double booking or something, like same day gig and tasting, the tastings were generally earlier, like happy hour times. So then I could just go after the tasting to a concert.
Yeah. And you were full of good food and good wine, which I'm sure helps.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
the best way to start a gig after having been to happy hour. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, I often, depending on the group that I'm with and the situation, I have been known to get absolutely buzzed, verging on like totally drunk with the people I'm tasting with, and I always have to be cognizant of that when I'm going into it. I'm like, okay, what's this gonna be like? Is it gonna be one of those, or is it gonna be? And luckily, with the company in California, I don't actually have to drink the wines because it's just they have 24 wines. I know which kit we're doing. I know the script, and so I just taste them through.
Oh yeah.
But my own tastings, I curate the list and then I curate the pairings, and so I taste along, and I end up getting. Let's say I couldn't play a gig after
Right.
it.
You're just really invested in your process and invested in the art
Absolutely.
that you're presenting to others, which is important. You really need to
Absolutely.
invest in your art. That's too funny. So say there was someone out there who is jealous of your life of wine and cheese as a career
Yeah.
occupation. Do you have any advice for someone who might be interested in entering this field?
Absolutely. You can go out and take a wine course. I mean, WSET, they have 4 different levels, and there are other groups out there as well, including like the Master Sommelier thing. If you've ever seen the movie Somm, uh, yeah, that's that. I mean, that's like super, super high level
Yeah.
stuff, but I mean, you can even just take like an introductory wine tasting class, and they'll teach you the basics and stuff. And also, just taste a lot of different wine. You know, as you taste more, watch a video online about how to effectively taste wine, how to do it quote unquote correctly, and then just start tasting wine and develop your palate. The only way to get better is, I mean, it's like with music, you have to practice in order to get better, and the same thing with wine tasting. Like, you have to practice and develop your palate so that you can differentiate between different flavors and aromas.
All that fun stuff. Twist my
All that fun
arm.
stuff.
Sign me up.
Right.
Right. Oh my gosh. Well, we did have a question from some folks on Instagram. We answered one of the questions, which was, how did you first break into the wine world? So it sounds like that restaurant job when you were doing your gap year between your bachelor's and your master's was really the first stepping stone. It was the gateway drug into this world for you.
Yeah, I mean, that was the catalyst for that allowed me to eventually turn it into like more of a career. But you know, I mentioned I'm from Washington State originally, and I grew up in the Columbia Valley, which is a big wine region. A couple years ago, they were one of their wines was rated like the best in the world. So it's like, I mean, within my 50 miles of my dad's house, there are like 250 wineries. So yeah, I moved to New York when I was 20, and obviously wasn't drinking before that, but then would go back, and whenever I would go back at holidays, I'd start to get into the wines there. And then luckily, the gap year, I was able to get the education, and that was it. That was the thing that kind of solidified
Yeah,
it.
that's awesome.
It was like, wow, this is really fun. This is really cool.
Yeah. Was your certification a requirement for when you started doing tastings for other companies? Was that something that was like a barrier to entry that needed to exist, or is there more flexibility in that world?
There's more flexibility in that world because you don't necessarily need to be certified in anything in order to be a good wine taster. And the whole aspect or the whole act of wine tasting is totally subjective because everybody has a different set of taste buds, different nose. So everybody's going to have a slightly different experience and sometimes a very different experience with each of these wines. And I know that there are a lot of the 42 tasters at In Good Taste are actually just like wine enthusiasts and are really good at it. They're good at wine. In order to do these, you also have to have like a performance component. I mean, you have to be comfortable in front of a crowd and whatever. So yeah, there are, I think, let's see, there's, so they brought 10 of us on in the same week. They called us their first cohort. And one of the people in my cohort is an architect. And so he actually zoomed in from his desk at the architecture firm. And he just does it for fun on the side.
Sweet.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, why not if you're into it?
Yeah. But it was definitely helpful for me because I think, having that base knowledge that you get in the certification allows you to be a little bit more curious about what you're tasting and about what you want to taste.
Right. Because you have some of that background knowledge that can help inform where you're going.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Cool. Yeah, I know for myself, pretty much, I know the word jammy at this point, but other than that, I'm like good wine or bad wine. Got it.
We should do a wine tasting.
We should. That would be fun. Actually, this whole concept, I had never... I knew this sort of existed, but at my work, I'm going to a wine party in like 2 weeks that's being hosted by someone who's working as a taster. By one of my coworkers' wives is running this tasting as a holiday party.
So cool.
Yeah, and my company's buying me some wine, and I was like, obviously, I'm showing up for this. But like it's really gained traction, I think, especially now because you can't go somewhere and it's a really enjoyable thing to share. I'm sure, does your company do like team building sorts of corporate events, that type of thing? Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, for the company in California and actually the company Confetti in New York, all of the tastings I do for them, or I'd say 98% are corporate team building things.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll have anywhere from 6 to 40 people. I mean, I just mentioned, I think before we started recording, that I got a notification that that I got a notification that I have a tasting tomorrow for, what was it, 120 people?
Yeah, I think you said
120 people.
240 and then split into 2 groups.
Yeah, so...
That's a lot.
And it's a corporate team building thing. They're having a thing before it, and then they're coming in to the break-off room that I'm in, and we're going to taste some wine. 8 wines, actually.
Sweet. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Sign me up. Oh, man.
Yeah. It's been fun. I mean, the other, like, all the ones that I do for my own business, they're all non-corporate. Yeah. So book clubs, birthday parties, family gatherings, friends who miss each other type of thing. And it's really popular. People, everybody's drinking right now anyway, because everything has been sucking for a while. So everybody's drinking, and it's a lot more fun to drink with purpose because you're learning something and you're solidifying that bond with whomever you're there with.
Right. I mean, liquor stores were deemed essential in all this, so
absolutely.
So there you have it, kids. And before I forget, our other question was one of the folks on Instagram wanted to know what your favorite porter is.
Okay. That's a good question. Thanks, Instagram. My favorite porter is actually from the Russian River Brewing Company. It's delicious. Very coffee. It's like, a lot of porters can be very high alcohol content. This one's not super high, so you don't need to be trashed off of one. You can have 2. But last night, this is actually on my table because I haven't cleaned up because I'm redoing my kitchen. But I drank this last night, which is actually my favorite stout. It is the Left Hand Brewing Company Nitro Milk Stout. Absolutely delicious, very smooth. If you like Guinness, you'll like it.
Oh, I miss Guinness so much.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Listen, someday they'll come up with it. There's enough gluten-free people in Ireland. They've got to work it out at some point. So that's where I got it
Seriously.
from. The celiac runs in the Irish ancestry. So I have faith that at some point they'll work it out for me.
Someday your compatriots
Right.
will.
But that sounds delicious and sounds just lovely. Cool. So I know we kind of glossed over your teaching position, but can you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing right now with teaching and how maybe some of that experience has parlayed into your other experience in events and in this tastings business?
I found that they've all just kind of worked together really seamlessly. Like the performative aspect of it has allowed me to effectively convey, whatever I need to teach, whether it be wine or oboe. But it's also helpful when you're talking to a client. So in events, it was really helpful with customer relations, like being able to put on that performer's charm or whatever. And I'm sure you know all about that.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. And then, I don't know, again, the attention to detail has been very helpful in not only the event industry, but in the tasting part of it, just because being able to perceive small nuances in flavor or aroma or texture or something. And I think it's just practicing that ability to perceive things that we do as musicians. Again, was helpful in all of that.
Yeah, for sure. And being able to share that with others, I'm sure, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like articulating what those things are.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. As I've worked in industries outside of music, I've really come to realize how much I take for granted that most musicians that you talk to on a daily basis do. They have an ability to talk about things in such minute detail and articulate what those things are. And those skills, the muggles don't always know how to do that. So
no, they don't. And sometimes they find it really frustrating. I don't know if you've ever gotten that, but they're just like, why are you so focused? Like, I don't know about you, but I need to know details about things. So like, we'll be going somewhere and I'll be like, okay, where are we going? Oh, we're going to this place. Okay, but like where? Can you? And I just like keep digging until I've gotten all of the information I need. And I think that, I don't know, some people don't get that or care for it much.
Right, yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. Like my support tickets that I do at work, I'm like so fastidious with like showing people exactly like it's so hard for me to be even remotely vague.
Right.
Because I'm just like, these are all the exact directions and here's a screenshot and this is what it looks like and all that stuff. Because we get used to that when especially if we're like in lessons or something like that, or even if you're coaching. I think you mentioned coaching ensembles at your teaching job. I mean, you can't just be like, I don't even know how to say something vague.
Right.
You can't just give some like, make it better. What does that mean?
Hey, in the middle, just make it more interesting.
Right. And it's like, what does that mean? Can you expand on that? But yeah, that's very cool. Well, thanks so much for sitting down with me and chatting about all these fun things. I mean, I think we've gotten into some cool stuff. I definitely know a little bit more about the wine tasting world than I did half an hour ago.
Yeah, thank you. It was my pleasure being here.
But yeah.
Also, it's really fun to chat with you always. So
I love hanging